Welcome to the Range Podcast. I'm Ricky Bruley, and with me is Jake Hollywood Iverson. Join us at the archery range, where we'll tell stories from the hunt, discuss technical bow shooting tactics and gear, and pick the brains of some of the most successful people to ever shoot a bow. Whether you're about to shoot that X for the win or send an arrow at a trophy buck, this podcast is for you. The Range Podcast is brought to you by Vapor Trail Archery, makers of the best bowstrings money can buy, originators of limb-driven arrow rest technology, and innovators of Stokerized stabilizer systems. Welcome to the Range, everybody. I'm your host, Ricky Bruley, and I am sitting here with a gentleman who we've known for a little while. He helped us. He took some fantastic photos for us, and it was actually our last Inside Archery cover. And welcome to the show. This is kind of an impromptu episode. We thought we'd do something fun and do it around a fire and just have a conversation. So how you doing, man?
Good, man. Yeah, when you get 50 degrees in January, I guess you take the opportunity to have a little bonfire chat.
I know it's wild too, because when we planned this, we wouldn't have known it'd be this warm either.
No.
So I was completely prepared to be bundled up and suffering.
Yeah, that's great. Just like sitting in a deer stand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, right?
Except not worried about the noise.
Yeah, exactly. Tell us a little bit about you, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you do, your family? And I know we maybe got a little bit into that, but talk about your archery origin story.
Oh, sure. Okay, so, yeah, my name is Paul. My name is Paul Vincent. I'm a photographer by trade. So I went to school for accounting and finance and figured out that wasn't for me.
Oh,
so,
see, I didn't know that. See,
yeah.
I love this.
Yeah, it's a little-known factoid. But did that and then ended up doing photography full-time in July of 11. So we're like 13 years into this endeavor.
Yeah.
So I get to shoot. Most of my stuff that I shoot is people on location. So a lot of like tourism work, New York Times, Polaris, Harley, that type of work. So working with people on the field, not as much studio stuff, although we can do a few things like that too. So yeah, it's been a fun journey traveling and getting to meet people. That's kind of the fun part for me, is you get to meet so many different people and go to so many different interesting places. I like to say I'm shooting interesting people or interesting places. You just get cool access to different things.
Yeah.
The other day, we were at like some ice festival, and we were just like in the back. And nobody questions you when you have your camera and you're shooting. Then it's like, and CEOs are like, "What, you want me to do? What? Okay, cool."
Yeah.
Everybody just listens to you when you have a camera. You could tell them to hop on one foot, and they would, But it's fun building a rapport with somebody, engaging with them, or figuring out like in this environment, like what's beautiful, like a mountain bike, trail. Okay, how do you shoot this in a way that kind of shows off the landscape? So definitely an outdoorsy person. Grew up doing like wilderness leadership camps in high school and college. I always love just being outside. Inside gets me a little bit like kooky, so that's why winter can be rough here. And then I'm from Minnesota. Grew up in Minneapolis. Still live here. I've hunted pretty much all Minnesota right now. Pretty much hunt in Minnesota. Hopefully we'll go out west. And then I have a wife and 2 kids, a 3 and a 5-year-old, which keep me busy. So it's that balance of finding time to hunt and also being a dad and also working. And life is full and wonderful and has its challenges, but I feel very fortunate to have the opportunities that I do have.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Oh yeah, the archery origin story. So the first time I went and sat in a deer stand, my father-in-law got me into hunting. So he is an avid outdoorsman, a lot of bird hunting, a lot of pheasant, ducks, and deer. He was hunting when they're just recurves in their finger on the strings, and once they had little leather holds, they're like, oh, that's for sissies, they wouldn't do that kind of stuff. So he's, where I learn a lot of my stuff from, but he has a little property about a half hour from us that I get to go and hunt. So the first time I went out there, it's just load all the boys up, brother-in-law's sons, Alan, father-in-law, in the truck, and head out to the farm and just sit. And I'm like, just sit? Okay. And then at about 5 minutes to sunset, somebody comes, 5 minutes, shooting light left, father-in-law walks down the corn line, but I don't know. So I'm like is this a deer? And I'm not like drawing back or anything, but I don't even know what it is, and I'm like, there's something out there. My heart is racing. Like I'm sitting in a stand, not doing anything, and then something starts moving, something starts happening, and my heart starts like racing. And it was my father-in-law. It wasn't even a deer, but that feeling of being out there in an environment that it's stock hunting where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna surprise you basically in your natural habitat and try and in that moment sort of outwit you or be quiet enough, just not screw it up enough where you get an opportunity to harvest a deer. So that was, what year would it be? Probably like 2018 or 19. But I didn't really draw back on a deer until like 2018 or 19. And once you do that, it's just like, it felt like it was game over for me. It just really hits my adrenaline and my outdoorsiness, the strategy, the techie of your gear, as well as the weather. What's that doing? Where's your pressure at? Where's the wind going? This whole fall, I couldn't help but, like, once deer season was over, I'd be like, oh, I can stop looking at the flags now. You're driving into work and you're like, northwest wind. Okay, that would be sitting here. That'd be sitting there.
Oh, I love it.
Going out to the stand, you're like, oh, it's a little different out here. It's a little different. It's more north. Okay, then that's going to affect it because can't be blown into the corn, can't be blown into the beans. So yeah, kind of like fully got me, and then found some other buddies that are really into deer hunting as well, archery and gun too. But just that common connection, and then you start telling your different stories, texting them when you're sitting in a deer stand, texting my uncle who is on my mom's side, who we don't have a ton in common, but like deer hunting season rolls around and we're like, you sitting?
Yeah.
Sitting?
Yeah.
Like, see, what are you seeing?
Some common ground,
Yeah, exactly. And then you're texting trail cam photos to people and you're waiting for the video to download so you can see it.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Ricky Bruley here, Vapor Trail. We're really excited about some new features that we've just added to the Gen Integrate X limb driver arrow rest. Previous model that we had the micro adjust knob that stuck out, and so it made it difficult to remove these one-piece low pro quiver from Matthews. We've eliminated that knob, and now it's an Allen key that you would use to make that adjustment. We thinned up the area here where the activation cord is as well. We really squeezed it in about 1/4 of an inch. It's a little bit lower profile, so now you don't have any issues with the low profile quiver. Comes off nice and easy. You also have, of course, the added feature of the integrated mounting system, so you can mount the arrow rest right to the rail on the riser of the bow. Additional features include new markings that differentiate your locking screws from your windage and elevation screws. All Vapor Trail arrow rests have a free-floating head, providing more forgiveness and greater downrange accuracy. No need for a bow press. Simply tie the activation cord to the limb and say goodbye to interference with cam timing caused by cable-driven arrow rests. The new and improved GI8X is available and ready to ship. Trust the originators of limb-driven technology and head over to our website at vaportrailarchery.com or stop into your local archery pro shop to get yours today. How did your season go?
Oh my gosh. So I'll start off with I'm in like kindergarten when it comes to hunting. Everything is new to me and it's exciting. I've been hunting for like 5 years, but I don't know what it is. I'm like an adrenaline junkie. I just love like the adrenaline hits. So like skateboarding, snowboarding stuff growing up. And for some reason, sitting still in a deer stand, it gives it to me. It scratches that itch. So it was a long season, lot of opportunities. Ended up closing it out. So if you're gonna sit about 30 times, that's about what I did this year because I have property that's 35 miles away from us. My father-in-law has a little farm up there. So
that's good, man. That's a strong effort.
Oh, it's a family effort. Like my wife's like, I'm taking the kids. I got it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be home for bedtime. Like I can help do stories and all that stuff. But I was just addicted to it. Then you got the trail cameras and you're looking at all that stuff. You got all the stuff that you see beforehand. And then you're like, okay, I think this is rut. And so for all the 30-ish times that I sat and it didn't go according to plan how you draw it up, the last time it did. You know? So that was a nice way to end the season.
Mm-hmm.
Last year I didn't harvest anything. I shot one above the lung below the spine, and he lived. We saw him on camera later.
Really?
So, but then I didn't take anything all year. So,
okay.
So then this year we did have success, which was a really nice way to end it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I didn't get out too much. I think I got out maybe 3 times. So 30 days opposed to my 3.
Yeah.
Know.
Well, I'm in that phase where you're just trying to learn so much.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you go out, it's like, so I've been hunting for this was my 5th season, all archery with my father-in-law, mostly on his land and stuff. And every time you're sitting in the stand and you see a deer and you're like, oh my gosh, I think so. That's so cool. You know, and then you see one and you get a chance to draw on one and you don't shoot, and then you actually take a shot and you're like, oh, I didn't see that branch or limb or whatever it is in the way. And, I mean, every single step along the way, you're just learning so much. So just seed time has been super important for me. You know.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, this year was a little, just my focus was kind of in a different area, you know what I mean? And I want to get out west. I want to start doing that again, you know what I mean? And so like the last couple of years, I haven't drawn any tags. And so that's where my focus has kind of been. And then, so I've got some spots that I can deer hunt here in Minnesota, but they're not real good, you know, to the point where it's like, when I do go out, it's simply just because I got a little bit of time to get away and I'm just going to go sit. Like I don't have any expectations. I'm just, you know, testing gear and, you know, trying out. I've got a saddle. I started doing some saddle hunting and a couple years back. And so again, just like, okay, I just at least got to get out a couple times to, you know, keep in the rhythm with it. Cause every year, the first time I climb up in the tree, it's kind of like, oh wait, how do I do this again? You know what I mean? So, so it is strange for me because I used to do a lot of the metro hunts, so I would hunt quite a bit. But it just got to be a lot with our 3-year-old, and so I was like, told my wife, I was like, well, would it be easier if I just took like a week-long trip out west? And she was like, yes. I'm like, all right, done. That's what I'm gonna do. But I haven't drawn, so so I've been going out to the boundary waters and fishing and doing stuff like that, just to you know, just to still get away. But yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool that you got out so much. And then especially with you being an adult onset hunter too. And, you know, it's just really cool that you're getting out and you're getting at it and you're doing it with a bow. I love that, you know. And, you know, maybe you do some gun hunting too. And I'll only shame you a little for that. But.
No, I've never gun hunted for a deer. I mean, we'll do pheasants. So really it's like my father-in-law, I don't know how long it took him to get through college, but he was just hunting. He, you know, up in Nodak, just birds and deer. I mean, they grew up hunting all the time. They have land, you know, family land scattered throughout the state, and it's like these beautiful properties. And then he bought a few, probably like 15 years ago, this farm that's 35 miles from us, and it's just like I came into the family, didn't have anything wrong with hunting. I just didn't have access to it. Didn't do it, and started hunting. Just go something social. Well, social to do. You drive out there, then you go talk about your stories when you come back to the car. You know. And that's but he likes bird hunting. Like go do pheasants because you're just walking and talking the whole time. So he'll get me out walking and talking, doing bird hunting. But I'm like, I don't have a deer yet. I can go sit in the stand. You know. So that's been my intro there, and so this year I got 2. Last year nothing, and then I had 3 the previous 3 years. So that was like, okay, like we're getting somewhere with it. But the bow thing is, you're just so intimate, like you're just so close, and it's such a. I mean, this year I'm sitting 15 yards from a buck, and he's behind bush. And first year no buck, second year no buck, third year you see some bucks. This year I saw like 6 bucks, and I know what ones are out there because you have the cameras now. It's like. Come like September, my social media is my trail cameras. It's like I don't even care about any other thing like news source. I'm just like wake up in the morning like, oh yeah, look at this guy. He's out here doing this and like, but that'll help you too because you can see. You know, I used to think that rut was like the 6th of November at our property, and now this year I'm like, I had bucks on does like the 13th. And so I'm like. What is going on this year? And the activity I think this year throughout the state, Minnesota was a lot different, at least that I've experienced. I know like some population things with last year's winter and more wolves and bears, etc.
Yeah.
But even around our property, we just didn't hear, like on that gun week, we just didn't hear the activity that we usually would.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like we had people taking stuff. So it seemed like it pushed a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, this year was really rad, really fun, a lot of fun different opportunities, learning way more about like where to sit, how to sit. We're like a big horseshoe woods with road and ag field in the middle. So you don't have like that deep back where you're just like, leave the back, don't go in the back, you know, leave that bedroom, and then you try and poach your trails your travelers from there. But so we're, I'm trying now to figure out, okay, here's some food sources. We had the farmer leave up, like how do we get into these zones? Spending way too much time on YouTube, like geeking out on access and food and mornings and evenings and which stand is which, and I mean it's just like a fire hose. And then to go with it, like the end of October, I'm shooting my bow and it just like blows up in my hand. So the limb on the top where the axle goes through, the back of that had cracked. Basically where the axle goes through, too old, just cracked, and I'm drawing back and I release. And it just, the energy just goes like everywhere on it. So I'm like, I've been trying to like be good and hold off and like be with this bow, and now I'm a week before, and now I have to like figure out. I mean, you have your bows that you like, but you're like, I've been trying not to actually kind of look because I didn't want to spend $2,000 on whole setup. But I mean, it's still fun. I got a new bow, shot that, got it all zeroed in, went out that first night, and I had just a little spike buck and a little doe. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a good season. I'll let those pass. I'll let the doe pass, and we got some more stuff coming down the line. But then it's just from that end of October all the way till December 18th was the day that I got my doe and a buck that night. So
cool.
So that was my last sit. We had a little warm up that came through Minnesota. I mean, a lot of states did, but it was cool in the mornings. Went out in the afternoon. I sat in a different spot. I've done the saddle thing, so I really just hung a set and then got up and had a hangable platform with a seat on it, but used it like a saddle stand. And then I was like, okay, here's what's gonna happen. You do this every time, right? This is my game plan. They're gonna come out, warm up on the south side of the slope. Then they're going to go down and hit those beans because we had the farmer leave a couple rows of beans. Yeah. We go down and hit those beans. And then I'm not sitting in the stand that's over there because they know it's over there. So I'm gonna hang this set over here, and they're going to come across the field, and then I'm going to be in business. It's going to be great. Yeah. And that's how every hunting evening or morning starts, you've got it dialed. So no joke, I hang my set, and it's a new stand, so I like, break that stick off and throw it away. So you got like your lane and stuff, and then sure enough, like 20 minutes later, oh, there they are, 200 yards away. I got time. Okay, take my gloves off. Like they're gonna go down and hit those beans. They go down and hit those beans. Like okay, that's great, nice, good. There's 4. There's a mature doe, a medium doe, and then 2 like little yearlings. I'm like, oh, this is great. Getting stuff all set up, and she doesn't follow the bean line around. She just comes like straight across the field. Comes into the woods. I'm like, okay, which way are you going? You going that way? You going that way? Okay, coming this way. Perfect. Boom. You're like 20-yard shot. Like that's great. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. Wow, that just happened. Like I thought it would. And then I keep my eyes on her, and then the other does come in, and they're like, what happened? What happened here? Where's she at? Yeah. So they're looking for her, and then I'm like, oh, there's another deer. There's another doe. Oh, that's the 4-point that I've been seeing. I mean, I'm in kindergarten, man. So like a 4-point for me, it doesn't matter like how many spikes it has. I'm just like, I've never even drawn on a buck. So I'm like, and it's December 18th. So I'm like, okay, let's go, man. So he was on her trail. She had her glands all like scented up and stuff, and we got to her. So where she got shot, he just came right into her. But I don't have an arrow. Oh. So I don't have my like quiver on the bow. Yeah. I've got it on the tree. It's around the tree. So those other 3 deer, they go find her. Then they swoop back across, and the buck looks at them. So I'm like, great. Reach around the tree, pop one out, knock it, and I'm like, all right, let's go. Yeah. So then draw back. He's behind some bushes, and then he decides he's gonna go hook up with those does, and he turns and kind of does that like quartering away, like going out of my shooting lane window. I was like, well, it's now or never. And so it's just like, boom. So shoot that. And then my father-in-law like loves the social aspect of it. So I'm like, Alan, what are you doing? I was like, oh, getting ready for dinner. Like, oh, you got a second? You want to come out to the farm? He's like, oh, yeah, let's go. So he comes out. My brother-in-law comes out. And a buddy of mine comes out. Because I didn't know where I shot. The first deer I ever shot, no idea what happened until, like, I'm listening for it crashing through the woods. I just pull back and I shoot. Yeah. And then now, fast forward to this one, I'm like, okay, I know I pulled back. I know I got my peep on. I know I had my sights on. I know that I was on body. And then from there, I blacked out. So every time I, like, get a little bit further down the line of, like, control, but it's just, every little thing. I'm pulling back on this thing at 15, 20 yards. I'm like, dang, I'm going to spook it with my string just drawing back. Like, it's so quiet right now. And so instead of your traditional just, like, pull back, I'm, like, trying to be super quiet about it and super slow and whatever. But so I don't know how my shots are, but, we start tracking them. I'm like, well, she's there and he's there, and we go this way, and she's 50 yards off where I lost sight of her. And then we go start looking for him, and like, I can't quite find him. And then he's like 100 yards off. So they're both like really close in. We quartered them out there. And then, so the fun part for me, I think this is what does it with deer hunting for me, is it's like the 360. So I get to go out there, do the social thing, chat, engage, but then it's a solo activity, but then there's always some story afterwards, right? Yeah. And so now we're processing these deer. So we actually processed them in the basement, both of them. So that's like a fun thing for me. And then we got them tested for CWD, both of them. Because I'm like, I want to feed my family stuff that shouldn't get them. Right. We got them tested, but we processed them all in the basement. So it's now like we have New Year's, we do like a surf and turf thing. Like my father-in-law's always done. Well, actually, it was my grandfather-in-law's on that side. They would do lobster for New Year's. So now it's like we've got deer. My buddy got a muley in Montana, so we had some muley backstrap, whitetail backstrap, and just a couple different cuts and stuff. So I grilled all that stuff up, and it's like that's the family experience. Like that's bringing it all the way around of providing for your family, doing this thing. It's you're taking time away from the family, but then they also get to share in it because you're bringing, actually I don't know how many pounds of meat you'll get off of them. But we've got a half a freezer full, right? Yeah. So we've got a lot of meat for the year. Venison, we ground it up. We got old bacon ends, applewood smoked bacon ends, and so mix that in. Yeah. So it's now like we get to experience it as a family throughout the year. And you learn so much more when you cut it up, and it's a lot of work. But you're like, oh, the sirloin, that's where that is, and that's where this is, and that's how you cut this, and you just learn so much more about the animal in general. So that's kind of the fun part for me. So that was like my hunting years, as unplanned as possible. And then some amazing like interactions in the middle where we have a beautiful 10-point out there, and it's very tall rack, like comes and wraps around like nice halo, and then just super tall. Yeah. And I'm like, man, if I could just see that thing, that'd be fun. Yeah. And one night he just comes out. My wind is blowing over him. He's down a ridge, and my wind's blowing over him. Not very much, but I'm like, you shouldn't be there. Right. And there's these does that come through, and I'm like, oh, those does, like, did I spook them? Why are they moving like that? Like, what are they doing? I bet they smelled me. So they cruise through. Then this 10-point comes through, and he's 60 yards from me down a ridge, no shot. But I'm like, oh, he's just going to chill. And then he, like, beds down, takes a nap for 25 minutes. Yeah. So I got binos on him. I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is incredible. Like, to see this thing that close, no shot. So I'm not even, like, nervous, I'm just kind of like, okay. Maybe he's going to hit these beans behind me after he gets up from his nap, And the canopy of, like, leaves on the floor. I can't, like, no way I can sneak up on him. I'm like, man, I get down there, and like, no, that's not gonna happen, sort of thing. So those interactions, you get to see. It's weird how it just totally sucks me in, and from the gear to the strategy of beforehand to that interaction where they're 10 yards away from you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I used a decoy this year, and it stopped him, but it stopped him in the wrong spot behind a bush. And like, oh, okay, like, you know, like he didn't come in and hit it, but it's like he stopped right here. I'm like, oh, well, my decoy's got to be over here. So he like comes in a little bit closer, but I'm like watching the snot drip off his nose. Like, oh my gosh, like, come on. And that's actually the one that I ended up shooting later in the year. Would I have loved a bigger deer? Yeah, sure, why not? But like my uncle bow hunts on my mom's on the other side. He's like, you shoot a little one, you never see a big one. I'm like, I don't shoot anything. I'm not ever going to shoot anything. You know, like I just got to learn. It's reps right now. So it's for me, drawing on a deer, seeing a deer, knowing the mistakes that you make. First year I started doing calls. I'm like grunting. And I can see him kind of coming around, and I'm like, oh, where'd he go? Where'd he go? And I go, Meh. Oh, you're downwind of me. You're right there. You know? So you're like, okay, it's just like making mistakes, learning, growing. That's been like the fun part of it. And the social part too, just other bow hunters. They're like, oh, you bow hunt. Like, oh, it's kind of a closer community, or maybe not a closer community, but if you find somebody that does do that, it's like very interesting. You have a very common point to talk about, even if you have nothing else that's similar in your lives. You know, it's just like there aren't a ton of bow hunters out there that actually like get into the pain and agony of you know having to be so close to a deer, so many chances, but really everything has to line up, and and it's a luxury at the end of the day to have that time to kind of spend and learn and just be in nature. But it's, I mean, if you want to fill your freezer, you use a gun. I mean, that's what I sort of learned this year. It's like, I mean, I could have killed a deer so many times with a gun, but for me, that isn't as interesting. So
I mean, absolutely. I did a ton of rifle hunting with my dad, and it was, back then we had it was one weekend, you got 4 days, and that was it. It was like, so for I didn't actually start bow hunting until I was 18. So from 12 to 18, I gun hunted, and the only opportunities I had was 4 days a year. So it was like the night before, you can't sleep, and I'm just all jacked, and I'm like super excited to get out and hunt. And, and every deer that I had killed with a gun up to that point, it gets you going, it gets you hyped up, and, we always processed our own deer. We never brought them in. And I think it was more or less just because it was like, oh, man, $100 to have somebody process a deer. It's like, well, I'll just do it myself. And we had no idea what we're doing. We're just, just following the connective tissue and just cutting and doing that kind of stuff. And we would still bring a lot of it in and have sticks made and stuff like that too. But, like with bow hunting, it's a totally different thing. And good for you for lacing some deer and getting that under your belt, because I don't know why people have this, and I did the same thing. Is for some reason I thought, I'm waiting for a big buck with my bow. That's what I'm gonna do. And I can't tell you how many deer, does, and everything that I had passed on with my bow because I was waiting for the big buck to come out. And then the big buck came out, and I just lost it. You know what I mean? I have no idea. I don't even know if I aimed. I have no idea what happened. It just, nothing panned out. And then I went, how many more, days after that without even ever seeing any deer. So it's one of those things too where, I'm not going to say that your uncle is wrong. Right. But at the same time, and it depends on where you are, but, I pass on a lot of smaller bucks now, like in some metro areas and stuff like that too, because there's other hunters out there who haven't had that opportunity. And so I'm kind of hoping that maybe they'll get that opportunity, and I'm never going to shame anybody for, if it's right for you, you do it, you pull the trigger, you know what I mean? So there's never any of that. And like I said, just, good for you being proud of what you did. And again, the full circle, right? You got meat on the table, and you got a nice buck that's out there that I'm guessing made it through the year, and you'll probably maybe get a shot at him next year too. But, there's just that whole thing too. You might get to the end of the year, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I didn't get anything, and not necessarily a bad thing. That doesn't have to be the ultimate goal, just the time spent and reflecting and clearing your mind. And, that's where some of my greatest ideas have come from, just sitting in a tree, or, just out on a hike or out in the wilderness, or, the Boundary Waters is an amazing place for me to reflect on things and do all of that. But awesome. And it's been really cool, like watching how excited you are, like about this whole
I get
thing.
like
even
worked
just,
up just talking,
Yeah, even just talking about it, it's awesome. I love it, and that's one of the reasons why I thought you'd be great to have on, because I just remember when we went out to, is that the where we took the photos? That's the same ground. Mm-hmm. So like when we went out there, and I just remember your enthusiasm, and I've got a shot of you up in the tree, like hanging out behind me, like taking photos, and you just got a big smile on your face, and it was a blast, cruising in the Wheeler, and I look back at all those photos pretty fondly when you came into the shop and did all that stuff too. So and just really cool that because then. You're 5 years in now. Then you were probably only maybe 2. I think you only had 1 season under your belt maybe at that point. Yeah. And so it's really fun to see, your progression in all of that, and that you've got someone to help you do it too, because that's the most difficult part, I think, is, I grew up in it, and so I was just, it was just there. Right. And for you and for a lot of people that want to get into it, I think they just don't, because they don't really know where to start. And YouTube's a great resource, but still, it can't replace actually having somebody there that can go out there with you, and you guys can have those talks, and so.
Which in a way, like the pro shop and the range that you guys have here is kind of an opportunity for that too. I don't know, just thinking about that, like if people don't, you can't absorb as much on YouTube or in a book or whatever as you can just watching somebody do something, or somebody watching you do something. Yeah, kind of more that mentor mentality. So I hope that people want to get into it, that the archery stuff or the range stuff becomes more popular. I'm even watching in here, and they're like your 3D stuff, like they're live targets, right? Yeah. Like that's the part that you kind of miss, or that I'm noticing missing when you go just shoot at the range, like Carver Park's by me on the west side. Mm-hmm. And they've got a cool like walk-through range where you're shooting different distances and heights and through little pockets and stuff, which is cool. Mm-hmm. But when a deer's coming through your shooting lane, is like, well, you're either shooting or you're not. You're making that decision like this. You may have a ton of time, or maybe you're drawing back and letting it fly in 5 seconds or less, So you're not just... it's just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if he's gonna move or stay or get behind that tree. Yeah. So
Well, hunting's hard, and there's again, like when you were comparing it to gun hunting too, I think there's just a certain amount of reverence that comes with it, that it just gets you hyped up. Like that mule deer buck up there on the wall, the bigger one that's looking at us. Yeah. That's one of my favorite hunts, because
tell me about it.
I shot him at 45 yards, and I mean, again, up to that point, I hadn't had a lot of big deer out in front of me. Like I was taking long shots. I was 60 yards. Plus where a lot of my deer had been killed up to that point, at least mule deer. And so when I was that close to him, and then just even thinking in my head going, man, like, all right, my skill set has gotten better, and it was just one of those deals where, we were out there, and it was like the second day, I think, and it was out in South Dakota with my buddy Travis, and I spotted him, and when I first started mule deer hunting, I would have sat there and gone, okay, let me try to work out a plan. Pull out the map, looking at the map. Okay, if I get over here, if I do this, if I do that, and I'm like, I go, Travis, I'm going. And he was like, all right, I'll sit up here and watch, and just kind of, you try to work out signals, but it never works. You know what I mean? Right. So I was just like, I'm going. And I've just learned that it's just like, I mean, this deer's, half a mile away. I got plenty of space in between me and it. I'm just going to get closer. I'm not going to screw around with like trying to plan it out anymore. I'm just going to get there, because I used to hesitate, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh geez, he moved. Oh geez, now he's over here. Oh geez, now he's over there. So it's like, boom, I'm going to get to the next ridge, and then I'm going to find him. And then it's like, okay, yeah, he did move. Okay, that's fine. Now I go this way. So it's just like getting in there and moving and looking. Okay, he's still there. All right, he's with this other little buck. They're down in this draw. Okay, get a little bit closer. Okay, now I'm about 200 yards out. Oh, they're still down in there. So I figure, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get up on this flat, and there's a couple of like big sage bushes right there. I'm just gonna get the big sage bush in between me and them, and I'm just gonna get up behind that bush, and I'm just gonna wait them out. Because I can see there's a trail, and I'm banking on them coming up that trail. And so the smaller buck comes out, and he comes across, and I'm like, and all of a sudden then I can see the antlers coming up out of the draw, and I'm like, all right, this is it, And I thought they were on the same trail, so I ranged the smaller buck. And I ranged him at, I think it was like 52 or 53, something like that. So I dialed my sight in, and I get ready, and I can see his antlers. I can't see his eyeballs yet, so I'm like, perfect time to draw. So I draw, and I'm just waiting for him to come around this bush. And again, like, so from me to the building right there, and he just looks like a giant. He's just all rutted up in his neck, and he's just, and I'm like, oh, getting shaky. And then, so he stops, leg, facing me forward. Yeah. So I'm just like, all right, perfect. And I send it, and he was actually closer. And so he was like 35 yards.
Oh, wow.
And just the size of them, the size difference, I just thought, I don't know. Right. It was just, it was really quick. I figured for sure they were on the same. So he was like 35. So when I pulled the trigger, I actually spined him.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it dropped him immediately. Yeah. And then he was like trying to get away,
right.
So immediately knocked another arrow, and I just walked right up on him 10 yards away, and then shot him again. And that arrow, I wasn't trying to shoot it in the heart, but that's where I got it. I was just trying to put it where it needed to be, and he was done. But just that was like one of the craziest, like super cool experiences, because he was so close, and it all happened. You
closed like 2,500 feet on that guy. Like, isn't that crazy?
And it took me 40 minutes from where I was to shooting him and him being dead. It was 40 minutes, and I was like, this is crazy. I couldn't. Just unbelievable, and so.
And Travis is sitting there watching it, right, Travis?
Yep. So I'm down in the bottom in this flat, and he's like up on this ridge, right? So then he basically just went all the way down to where the vehicle was parked, and I just told him, I said at the end of the day, I was like, we'll just meet at the truck, because we're probably gonna get split up. And so he didn't actually see the whole thing go down, because I got in to where he couldn't really see me very well, and then I think he just decided, okay, well I'm just gonna go over here and hunt, So he, because I told him, I said, you don't have to watch me. I'm like, if you see a deer, go get it, go after it. And so he kind of moved off, and I wasn't really too sure what to do. I can't remember. There's a landowner nearby that had given us permission to access. We had to go through just like a corner of his property. And we had met him the previous year and bought him a case of beer and stuff, so we could, in case we had to go through his property or whatever. But we hadn't said anything to him that year. And he actually drove out. I think it was that night after it, because I was like taking selfies and stuff, and then all of a sudden this 4-wheeler come pulling up side by side, and the guy's like asking me questions and stuff, and I had the bow with me and everything, and I actually didn't have to use his property. I went around the corner of his property to get to the deer, just because I didn't want to risk it. So he was kind of asking some questions, and I was like, yeah, I met you last year, because I knew his name. His last name's Jensen. Now I can't remember his first name, and I was like, yeah, we brought you, a case of beer last year and stuff. And he was like, oh yeah, I remember you. Okay, great. And here I'm thinking, man, he's got the 4-wheeler out here. We can just load this bad boy up. Yeah. You can get out to the road, take it to the truck. And he's just like, he was like, yeah, no, it's great. As long as you're bow hunting, I'm cool with you, so it's all good. He was like, if you want to pack your deer across my land to get to the road, all for it. Have a good day. Gets in, takes off. I'm like, really? And it's, 2 miles to the road. So, and it was getting dark, and I didn't really know where Travis was. So I took a chance, and I actually posed him. I kind of got him posed up you know, and kind of propped his head
up. Oh, for
up.
predators? So they're not.
Well, no, I posed him for photos.
Yeah, okay.
And, you know, because I figure, you know, rigor mortis is going to set in and everything like that. So I was like, okay, I'm like, it's getting dark. I wasn't sure, like my phone, it was really cold, so my phone froze, and I was like, I'm not sure about the navigation in here and how to get out and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just like, so I kind of posed him up, and I'm like, I would just started walking towards the road, and I was just trying to, was looking at the stars, and I'm like, pretty sure the road's over there. I'm just going to follow that. And so I followed it out, got to the road. I was walking up the road, and there was a gal that pulled over in her truck, and she had her kids in there, and she had groceries. There was just, like, the whole truck was piled with groceries. And she was like, do you need a ride? And I'm like, sure, why not? She's like moving grocery bags over so I can get in the truck. And then so she drove me up the road to Travis where he was at the truck. I'm like, yeah, I got my biggest mule deer buck down out there. And he's just like, what? Really? No way. He's like, I thought you like gave up. He's like, I didn't know, because he's like, I didn't get a message from you. I didn't get anything. And we had really bad service. And like I said, my phone was just being janky because it was cold. So, but yeah, because this is a while ago. This was 2013, I think. So it's 10 years ago now. Wow, that's crazy. I can't believe it's been that long.
Goes quick.
But yeah, it was a pretty cool deal. And then the next day we got on a bigger buck, and he shot it, and so we doubled up. And what's really funny about that too is I was kind of driving like this crappy I can't even remember what it was, a Nissan something. It was pretty beat up and not worthy of driving out there, and he was driving a Prius.
Perfect.
And so I was like, what if we double up? I'm like, do you really want to strap 2 mule deer to your Prius, to the top of your Prius? And he's like, yeah, that's a good point. So we rented a Dodge Ram, and we drove that out there. So we had the truck, and we had 2 deer in there, and it was rad. So,
but I think that's the interesting part about the deer experience is you can do it in a stand, you can do it out west. There's so many different places to do it, so many different experiences to have. But it doesn't really even matter if you get something or not. You always come away with some stories. It's hard.
Yeah.
There's challenge. There's struggle. And hopefully at the end there's victory. But that's cool to me that you go out there, and I think I've gotten into or tried to get into surfing over the years, and they say that you ride a wave like 3% of the time, and that kind of feels maybe even less with archery, like that you're actually shooting an animal. But like the predictability of something or the unpredictability of something, as well as like the potential outcome of like this amazing victory, have to do with how addictive something can be. You know, like you just, that drive to do something where at any moment it could happen. You can't predict it. And when it does happen, it will be like glorious, right? Is that drive that makes you want to go do something, want to try. And for me, that this fall is like, okay, I'm going to go sit 30 times. Yeah. I'm not going to see something a bunch of those times. Right. And it's just going to drive me a little bit more crazy to get out there and go. Because, you know, of course, you're going to see on the camera that night that something came right through there. Yeah. Or, oh, God, if I could only get in there, how would I get in there? You know, you're trying to solve the problem, which is fun. Yeah. Yeah, all that strategy behind it. And I haven't had too many places or opportunities where I can do that, because again, mostly what I've done is metro hunts, and it's just like you're sitting where you're sitting, you know what I mean? Doesn't matter which way the wind's coming or who's, you know, it's just we're there to reduce the deer population. And if a nice buck comes out, great, you know. And so and my 2 biggest whitetails have come from metro hunts. And it's interesting what you were saying about the rut, right? And how I always had that kind of I wouldn't say misconception, so to speak, but you know, just always thinking that the rut was always around like the rifle hunting season. Yeah. You know, I just assumed that that's the way that it went. And when is it, Ricky?
There's so many factors. You know what I mean? There's so many factors. But my 2 bucks I've killed, my biggest whitetail is November 17th, November 19th. Okay. And my theory on that is they're in that trolling phase. So they're desperation mode. You know what I mean? Like they're looking for every last doe they can find to breed. And the hard part about that is both the bucks, both of those bucks that I killed, I called them in, and which is typically not easy to do in Minnesota with the buck to doe ratio being so far out of whack, you know. But and it depends, right? There's certain pockets or maybe large private chunks of ground where the buck to doe ratio is a little more under control. But yeah,
so meaning more does per buck. It's just there aren't as many bucks density, so to call one in doesn't work as well.
Yeah, because there's no competition. Mm-hmm. It's like, why do I care about this buck over here when I've got 10 does over here that I can tend to, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. And so, and there's, when I was growing up in Northwest Minnesota, it was, I mean, man, everything was I mean, if a deer was coming out within rifle range of a deer hunter, it was dead. You know what I mean? Or at least, there was a shot at it, and so it's the brown, if it's brown, it's down kind of mentality. And again, no shaming in that area, but it's just, there's also the thinking that there's something just more manly about killing a buck. Mm-hmm. I don't kill does, that kind of thing too. So it's just like, so all the bucks are getting killed and there's like a ton of does. Mm-hmm. Because nobody because again, there's that thought, well, the does are the ones that, breed. And yeah, there's something to that, but there's still a balance. You still want to have like some balance there with that too. So, so the bucks don't get very big. There's not a lot of big bucks coming out of some of those areas up where I grew up. But yeah, so that's kind of where I've seen the calling thing being difficult, with that, with the buck to doe ratio kind of being out of whack.
But with your metro hunts, you called them in.
Yeah. My biggest buck, actually, he came into a call, but I waited. He was kind of out in the open, about 80 yards out, and I had no idea he was as big as he was either. I just, I was like, okay, I'm no chance am I letting him walk by, and just kind of waited because they and you probably experienced this, like you said, when there was that buck that you called, and then all of a sudden he's downwindy and he's looking at you. I mean, they can pinpoint that call right to the tree that you're sitting in. You know what I mean? So like, I don't want to, if I call and he's out in the wide open, 80 yards out, and he looks and he doesn't see a buck over there, but he's got like all these does in front of him, he's probably not going to really respond. He's just kind of like, well, I don't see another buck over there, so I'm just going to, stick with my does over here. Mm-hmm. But he got up behind some brush, and so then then I called, and then, okay, so now he doesn't know what's going on. He can't see where the call is coming from, so he's got to investigate and get closer. And so he zigzagged his way right into 19 yards.
Oh, wow.
And I shot him, and I had a bad shot on him, and that's a whole nother story that I've told in a few different podcasts, mm-hmm. but ended up getting them, and so that was really cool. And then the other one, it was 2 years, so that was 2019. It was November 17th, and it was the last day of the hunt. I had seen a much larger buck. There was a bigger buck running around in the area that a few of us had seen, and I'm not the best at judging. I'm not the best at scoring, but there was a couple people that said he was probably pushing 190, 200. He had a big drop tine on the left side, and I saw him actually twice in that last weekend hunt, but I didn't end up getting a shot at him. And so this other buck was coming in, and he kind of came by and he got down. He was about 100 yards out, and I just threw out a snort wheeze. And he turned and started zigzagging his way, and he literally came right to the base of my tree. I was, standing here like this, and he's right there.
That's incredible.
Like, just looking around. And then he kind of skirts around out here 15 yards, and he was just standing there. And that's not my strong side, so I had to kind of slowly get myself spun around, and I was able to get spun around and then shot him. And he just boing, two hops, and then he just stood there. And I could see blood dripping,
mm-hmm.
But I'm like, well, grab another arrow, knock it, draw back. May as well, you know. Why not? He's gonna give me it. I'm gonna hit him again. So I hit him again, and then he took off and ran right through this guy's front yard.
Oh, jeez.
And very nice groomed yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? His older gentleman. He's like he was in his 90s, but he was a doctor, so we called him Doc. And he gets super excited when we get deer off his property. But so this, you can just see the hoof prints going across his yard, and you can just see the blood, just everywhere. And this buck gets into the woods, and he falls over and dies. Well, when we got over there, like maybe, I don't know, it was like maybe an hour later, he had fallen, and his antlers got tangled up in some vines, so his head was up.
Oh,
so
weird.
we thought he was still alive.
Yeah.
So we're just sitting there just waiting. Like,
yeah.
Okay, is he going to, what's going, binoculars, like looking, we're about, 40 yards on the edge of the woods, just waiting to see what he's going to do, and nothing. So finally I kind of did a big circle, and I came around behind, and I was like, he never swung his head around. So I'm like, oh, he's got to be dead. And so, yeah, he was done. But, and I can show you, I've got that one. He's a Euro mount. He's right up above my desk back in the lab. But, yeah, just really, really cool to have those experiences where you're like, where I've tried calling and it just never seems to work. And you just get bummed out about it. You're just like, I don't know, am I scaring them away with my calls, or what's going on? Am I not doing something right? And then when it kind of comes together, it's really cool.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So you're saying for next year, there's always next year, right?
Yes.
You're going for like the more week-long out west experience.
Yeah.
I get what you say, or what your wife's saying. Like, if you give me a defined timeline, I can buy into that.
Yep.
And it's like, imagine if you're running a race and you just don't know how long you're running. So every time you get around the corner, you're like, oh, I got to keep going over there.
Yeah.
Like, that's what my season was, you know. But if here's your week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just as my daughter gets older, hopefully she'll get more involved too, and then I'll start taking her out. But yeah, it was like I said, I was coordinating those metro hunts, so I was doing 2 weekends in October, 2 weekends in November, and it's every other weekend. So, and then when the year my daughter was born, and then her second year is when I was still doing those metro hunts, and it also landed on the weekends when my wife's son would be with us. Oh, so it was like 4 weekends in a row throughout October and November, and she was solo with both the kids.
That's a lot.
And it's the hunt starts on a Thursday. We go out, set up on a Thursday, and then we hunt all day Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And as a coordinator, you're the first one out there and you're the last one to leave. So not getting home till, 8, 9 o'clock. Sometimes if someone shot a deer, we were out there tracking. I mean, there'd be some times where you don't get home till 1, 2 in the morning. Right. So it's literally just 2 ships passing in the night, for all that time. And she was really good about it, but I could tell she was getting burned out. And I was just like, hey, what do you think? I feel like, again, with that defined amount of time. And for me now, I'm kind of that point too, where like I can settle for, a week out in the wilderness and not necessarily have to be hunting, Yeah. Right. And so, but yeah, so this year, I guess it would be, I could draw a bear tag. If I do that again, I'll go up into the Boundary Waters, and do that for probably a week. But if I draw my North Dakota mule deer tag, then I'll do that.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Good.
So. Well, that's something you should try. You should, if you've never been out west, man, you should.
That's next. I mean, I have some buddies that are wanting to get out there, and I am totally into that. As you were saying, your daughter getting into it, it just reminded me. Macklin's my 5-year-old, and he came and sat with me twice this year, which was pretty fun.
Oh, that's right.
Once up in the stand and once in a ground blind. And then I always told him, when I get one, you'll come help me find it. Because last year he helped me look for the one we didn't find. We put 2 miles in on this lake shore. We just looking up and down and up and down. And never found it. So this year he's like, okay, I'll come look with you. So we find it, but I shoot these 2, but I didn't think I hit them well. So I thought it was going to be a hard stock. And so we find them right away, and we just start gutting them and cutting them up and bring it home. And my wife's like, Macklin's pretty upset. And I'm like, oh, dang. Yeah, no, I understand. I thought we'd be out here till like midnight. Oh, shoot. So I had just the buck head, and we brought back, and we got back, and I was like, Mac, the guys are going to go out to the local bar, and we're going to have root beer and pizza. Would you come out? We're just going to tell 15 stories. Yeah. Come with us. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, but where's that buck? And so the backside of a buck head is not like pretty. Yeah. And he so I'm kind of hiding it from him, and he just grabs the 4 points of an antler, 2 antlers, the little guy, and he's just like loving it. Yeah. He's like, what's back here? Checking it out. And so I think, it's that like learning young, he has such more an advantage than what I do. Right. But that's kind of a cool experience wrapping it full circle with the family and the food and, the process and the whole, not just shooting an animal. People that don't hunt and they're like, oh, you bow hunt? I'm like, yeah, that deer has an unfair advantage on me. It's like everything has to go right.
Yeah.
And it gets still, I had one that was 10 yards away. It came through right at last light. And it's just like, comes right through and I drop, boop, shoot, shot a vine right in front of it. Like, because it's just so quick. He can be right there and you just got nothing. So it's an unfair advantage for the animal. We do have equipment, but it doesn't work out all the time.
No, I've had the arrow fly right over their back because I used my 30-yard pin instead of my 20. Just silly stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or when I started to switch over to primarily using a single pin, you forget to move your sight.
Tell me about that. Do you like that? I feel like a lot of people love it.
Yeah. I do. And again, it's just one of those things you have to get used to, but that's what's awesome about these 3D shoots too, because it's like in between every shot, you're guessing the yardage and then you're moving your sight. So it really helps you get in the habit of doing that. And the thing that I kind of learned to do too is, because you can do like a multi-pin slider, so then your bottom pin is like a floating pin, which is kind of nice too. But at the same time, I guess the way that I've kind of figured it out, and I don't know, maybe some people would argue this with me or whatever, but this is just based on my experience, is I've figured out, I like set my bows up and I figured out where I can have my, I basically set it so that my 20-yard pin is just all like maxed to the top, right? So like if I'm in a situation where I need to quickly dial up, I can just, without looking, right to the top. And then I know where that's at. And then when I practice, I figure out like how many inches of drop am I getting at 30 and 40 yards? Because then typically my 20 and 30, I don't think there's a bow that I've had where my 20 and 30, I don't even have to move my pin. You know what I mean? Yeah, my arrow drops a little bit, but, considering that your vitals areas is this big, I've never had an issue with that. When I spined that one buck, I just completely misjudged the yardage. I ranged that buck, but he was, way, 15 yards behind. And so I completely misjudged that. But so I've got that figured out. And then it seems like, if they're 40 or more yards away, I think you have a greater chance of being able to get away with some of that movement. You know what I mean? Because I've had some people argue that. Well, I don't want to have. That's more. I got to move. And it's like, well, if I have to go 40, I can move my pin and shoot high. And I practice that.
Right.
So I don't dial my sight to 30 and dial my sight to 40. I practice with my pin at 20, and then I just
adjust
compensate
accordingly. Yeah.
And figure out like, okay, does my pin have to be closer to the spine? Because I shoot at an actual like 3D deer target in my backyard. And so I try to figure those things out so that in a pinch, when something's happening quickly, I want to make sure that, and especially in the whitetail woods, most people, you probably range the trees and then you kind of know, okay, if they're out at that distance, that's probably roughly where they are. And that can kind of help you so you're not having to fiddle around with your range finder and all that kind of stuff. So. And then for longer range, you know what I mean? It's nice to not have to, you're just focusing on that one pin and you don't have any other pins kind of just like getting in the way or kind of mudding up your sight picture.
That simplicity actually is the curiosity point for me, because this year, like you said, you're in the woods, you mark your trees when you sit down. And that's what happened this year. It's like she came in and I'm like, okay, you're 15 and I don't have time to sight you. It's just like pull up and shoot. But this year I pull up and shoot and I know that my pins are on, but she's walking through my lane and it's like pins are on, I shot, and it's luckily so close it doesn't really have that much of an impact on it, but it's just so quick. So just having one pin of like, okay, not pins are on, pin is on, there, boom, shoot.
And with most of my setups, they're pretty flat shooting. I don't get crazy with heavy weight arrows. I don't buy into any of that kind of stuff. I agree weight plays a role, but kinetic energy, there's a formula, and that includes both speed and weight. So once you start getting too heavy with your arrow, now you're losing speed.
Right.
So there's a happy medium there. And so, most of the bows that I've had in the last, probably 10 years, they fly pretty flat. So even if I try to use a multi-pin, my 20 and 30 are stacked so tight that it's hard to even really decipher, you know what I mean? And so that's when I started going to the single pin, and I tried to go back to a multi-pin, and then I ditched that idea pretty quick.
Yeah.
Right back. Yeah.
I was shooting, you helped me out on that Martin Bengal, early 2000s Bengal.
Yep.
That thing had a rainbow.
Yep.
It was just yeah, so there was a decent distance between my pins.
Yeah, so then you got better gaps in your pins, of course, but now they're just so flat shooting. What bow did you end up getting when yours blew up?
I did the Matthews Phase 4, so the 33-inch. What I didn't really realize as you're researching stuff, and they're like, oh, these bows are great, and now the new ones come out, and they're like, oh yeah, basically the strings that come with all of these old ones are okay, but not great. I mean, to use throwaway is maybe over-exaggerating, but not that far off. So I'm like, okay, well, great. So, Vapor Trail has this sweet
You
sale
just happen to
going
know.
on. Yeah. So
even though I thought that was funny, because I was like, I saw your order come in, and I was like, oh yeah, he took advantage of the 40% off deal. I'm like, that's pretty cool, but we probably would have given you that deal anyway.
Oh no, but it's great. So yeah, and I'm pumped to get those on. But yeah, the Matthews. So go in and I put like 60 arrows through it the first day I get it, and then I go out and sit and see those two, and then I shoot a little bit more, and that's end of October, early November. But then you sit in a stand for so stinking long. I hadn't shot it until the end of November. Then my brother-in-law comes home. We go out to the farm, and I'm shooting. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm upgrading like 20 years of technology, so I'm not splitting hairs between stuff. So I'm not the best person to go with as far as the technical differences between this and that, but it just shot so nice. It felt so good in the hand.
Yeah.
But most things would compared to what I had. But,
for sure.
But yeah, it was a fun experience. It's a fun bow to shoot. I'm sure I could fall in love with other things too. But yeah, that thing was there and ready, and I shot a few different ones, and that just felt good. I shot the Elite.
Omnia?
No.
Or
the carbon one.
Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? I should know this.
But that was very nice. Now you got me on Omnia. But I shot that at the store, and that was very nice. I did really, really like that. But that was at a box store. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather buy from the shop that I keep going into and bugging them and learning things from. So I bought it from Cabin Feeder down there.
Yeah, no, that's good. They're good dudes down there. Era.
Yeah, the Era. The Era is very nice. Not much hand shock, even for being carbon. Pretty quiet. Yeah, I really like that one too. But
yeah, you wouldn't have to. That bow will last you a long time.
Right.
If you're not worried about. I've gotten to the point now too where I do a new bow every year, and now I'm just like, time is so limited that when my bow is like dialed in, I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to touch it anymore. Yeah. Like I used to swap out strings, 4 or 5 times a year, and now I'm just like trying to carry them, 4 years. You're like,
this is tuned. I got it.
Yeah, it's like it's good to go. I just want to leave it where it's at. But yeah, and I'm going to be shooting a new bow this year, the Prime RVX 36, and I'm pretty excited about that. I had the PSE Mach 34 that I shot last year. Absolutely loved the bow, and still love the bow. Just I needed to do some work on my truck, and I needed some cash flow. So so sold it, fixed my truck. And I've only got like 3 arrows through it so far. I've had it for like 2 months.
Yeah.
But I've had I've had our new arrow rest on it. It fits on these new Prime bows, and
I do have to get rest. So I've got the one that comes with. You can figure out what
probably
the quad.
Probably an MX.
It's the quad.
It's probably the MX1 QAD.
Yeah. But it was funny because I'm just. It's a week before a rut. Like I'm just like, let's line it up. Let's go.
You do what you got to do. I get it.
But then I'm talking to the guy, and is like, well, what about because I wanted to because I had the 7X from before my Martin Bengal.
Yep.
But now they have that angled like diverter.
Yeah.
And so
it doesn't fit.
So it doesn't fit. So we were trying to figure out a way to do it, and the guy's like, well, you want this QAD anyways. I'm like, well, why? And he flicks it, and the arm for it, makes a noise or whatever. But, I'm just like in the flow. I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
And then like after I leave, I'm like, he was flicking it up. Like, it flaps down, and it's all rubberized. And now, the QAD, like the arms on it, they wrap them in moleskin. They tape them. Now the new one, they actually have little rubber bumpers on them.
Yeah, the MX2, yeah.
Yeah. But the old ones, they're wrapping them in moleskin. The moleskin's falling off.
Yeah.
And then it snaps and locks up. So if you want to get out of the tree, you got to click it down, which is a noise. And you can kind of sneak it through, but you don't like to do that. I was like, this is my vapor trail. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely get you set up there too. And so that new rest, it's been extremely popular, and we've had a hard time keeping them on the shelves. And and then we ran into some, machining, not machining issues, but basically just there was like a breakdown in communication with our machinist, and there were some things that happened, and now all of a sudden we're like, okay, now we have to go find a new machinist, and that doesn't, that stuff doesn't happen overnight. They got to spec parts, we got to do R&D, we got to do prototypes, we got to make sure everything's good, and so that takes some time. And so we had some back orders, but we just started getting those filled this week, which is thank God for that. But I would put a rest on my bow, and then I would shoot it, and then it was like, and then I'd have somebody that would be like, and I'd get like maybe a couple shots through, right, just to tune the bow. But then we'd have like a writer or somebody that wants to test it or review it or something like that, and so then I'm just like, well, okay, I'll give you the one off my bow. So I did that like 3 times until finally now I've got one on there that'll stay on there. And I'm just looking forward to shooting it. I was hoping to have it all tuned up today so we could shoot. We'll
reschedule that. We'll get that for sure.
Yeah,
we got a fire going here, but I legit do miss it. I mean, it's all rubberized, and then even from like the timing with the drop and stuff, it's like if you're cable drive, you've got to figure that out. If you're out, like Matthews has that the stay afield system, and it's like, well, I would have to then figure out how to retime my rest into that new cable if I do that out in the field. It's like, or you could just tie a shoestring to your limb, and you're like, you go right. And you can get it's all rubberized with the cage, but it's got a little like escape hatch in the corner, and so you can get it out of there if you need to for like taking out. It's just, I don't know, I'm excited to get one of those back on. But overall, really fun bow to shoot, and definitely. flat and fast. It's really cool.
Yeah, Rory's got one, and I've shot it a few times, and I really liked it. It's hard to find a bow that you don't like. They're all so good. And we're partial to Prime here because that's what we sell in the pro shop. But again, then also, I really wanted to. I have a friend that reps for PSE, and I had shot. It was 2 years ago. I had shot his 80-pound bow, and I didn't even think I can't draw most 80-pound bows, and he was like, well, here, try it, and so the Total Archery Challenge, and so I was actually able to draw it back and then shoot, and it was really smooth, and I was like, you're pulling my chain. That thing is not 80 pounds. And he, of course, had a scale right there. Scaled it out. And I was like, wow. So that cam system that they have is so efficient that that was one of the reasons why I wanted to switch over to that and try that EC2 cam with the Mach 34. And it was a smooth draw. So now that I've got the Prime, it is a little harder draw. So something I have to get used to. I'll probably drop the poundage down a little bit and then just work it back up. But they're all so nice, man. I don't, it's hard to find a newer bow these days that doesn't feel good in your hand when you shoot it.
Right.
Especially if you're going from like a early 2000s Martin.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was great. It was a hand-me-down. I loved it. You helped me like tune it in. I was like, at that point, I was like, maybe I'll just get a new one. And then like, no, Ricky helped me tune it up. We got new strings on it. We just got it dialed in a little bit more. And I kind of like that challenge of it too. It's like, I'm not taking mountain shots where I'm taking a 70-yard like crazy. I'm 15 to 30 yards. That's my sweet spot. So I was like, I can do this. And then it was just like, no, you can't because I'm broken. I was like, it decided it was not going to be hunting deer anymore. That's kind of scary. I've never had a bow completely explode on me before. The energy just went
fired some
all over. It just went like up, down, everywhere. Even like the knot came out of the arrow because I don't know why it came out of the shaft, and then it like pinked back, and the knock or was behind me, and the arrow was flopped 10 feet in front of me, and then all the string was just sort of like sitting there.
Yeah.
All the limbs were like limp and loose.
Yeah.
And I was like, what just happened? Luckily,
that's crazy.
Nothing really like got hurt, but
that's cool. Speaking of children, here there's my little one.
Oh,
come here, baby. Come on, come here. So yeah, we'll have to wrap it up.
Yep, that's great, man. Perfect.
But thank you so much for being here, and we should do this again.
Thanks for having me.
We can go out if you want. We can shoot for a little bit if you want to shoot for a little bit.
No, you do it with your family. We'll hit it another day.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
But well, she's gonna pack up and head out. The little one's gonna kick it with us. Say hi. There's the camera. But yeah, so thanks again for being here. If anybody wants to find you, where can they? Social media, where can they find you?
Oh yeah, so it's Paul Vincent _s on either side. So _Paul Vincent _ or paul-vincent.com. So that's all my commercial work on there. So
definitely go check him out. Super talented, great guy. I'll definitely going to take care of you if there's anything you need for your photo needs. And you can find us at the Range Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you head over to the Vapor Trail YouTube channel and give us a like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you can be up to date on all things archery. And if you are listening, be sure to give us 5 stars on either Spotify or iTunes. And with that, we are going to pack up our bows and arrows, and we are hitting the range. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, man. That was really great. That was fun. Glad we had the fire.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Vapor Trail is now offering an exclusive discount to the Range Podcast listeners. Enter promo code TRP15, that's TRP15, at checkout for 15% off VTX bowstrings and Vapor Trail and Stokerized branded t-shirts, hats, and other gear.